This install was filmed with an early release bike. Sometimes these bike designs change over time, so please check the description below to see if we've listed any changes. G'day and welcome to the Mustard Bikes Garage. My name's Mark and today we have the CF-MOTO CLX 700 from 2021. We're going to take one of our tail tidies and we're going to work on trimming this rear fender down as much as possible so it matches the rest of the aesthetics of the bike. This product will also fit the Heritage and the Adventure models as well as this Sport model. Before we get started though, we're going to need some tools. To get the job done, you're going to need a 13mm socket with a long extension. If you haven't got a long extension, a 13mm spanner will do the job as well. You're also going to need a 16mm or a 5/8 spanner, a 10mm socket, a pair of side cutters, a Phillips head screwdriver, and a 6mm Allen key. In the box, you find the card that directed you to this video, a small bag with a number of nuts and bolts and cable ties, 2 larger cable ties, and then in the bottom, wrapped in paper, you find the tail tidy itself. The bag itself contains 4 cable ties, 3 countersunk bolts, and these 3 25mm long hex spacers. Now we've got our tools together, we're going to start with disassembling the standard rear guard. We're going to use our 10mm socket and remove the 3 bolts shown here. Using our 13mm socket with the extension, we're going to remove the bolt on the back of the rear fender here. If you're using your 13mm spanner instead of the extension, you can get access to it here. Now we can take our 6mm Allen key and remove the last 2 bolts holding on the rear fender. Just be careful when you remove this last one, the rear fender is going to drop down and come away from the bike. So just make sure you don't drop it on the ground. Once the rear guard is loose from the bike, just take the cable from underneath this plastic clip so we have a little bit more room to work with. Using your 10mm socket, remove the last bolt on the back side of the rear guard. With this bolt removed, we can separate the metal bracket from the plastics. Now we have the rear fender removed, we need to disconnect the wiring. To get access to that, we're going to need to remove this plastic plate here. We do that by removing the 4 screws with our Phillips head screwdriver. With the cover removed, we can disconnect the 3 plugs underneath it. Do so by lifting the white tabs on the black plugs and then just pulling the bullet lugs apart. We're now ready to start assembling the tail tidy. To make our life a bit easier, we're going to remove this side cover just by removing this last Phillips head screw. We can then set that to the side, and now we want to remove both these indicators. We do that using our 16mm or 5/8 spanner, just by undoing the nut on either side. And we're just going to set that to the side here, and then do the same to the other side. We're now going to swap this out for the tail tidy. I'm just going to lay the tail tidy in the same orientation that we had that rear fender, so we get the indicators on the same sides. And then we simply install the indicators in the reverse process to removal. So we start with the flat washer, the lock washer, and the nut. Feed that through until it engages, and then do that up. And the same on the other side. Then we just take the wire here and unravel that one. And then lastly, before we go to fit this to the bike, we're just going to feed some of the supplied cable ties through these little bits here in order to hold the wiring in place. So just go through the back, run that one through. And this one we're also going to take this LED bolt wire and do that one up. And same on the other side. Then we'll just cut the ends of these cable ties off. And that assembly is then ready to fit to the bike. To install the tail tidy, we're going to start by reinstalling the metal bracket from the stock Fender. We're just going to put it in place and then reinstall the two Allen head bolts in the two back spaces here. And the hex head bolt that goes in from behind. Next we can tidy up this main wiring harness. We're going to use the two large cable ties in the kit. We're going to start by getting the wiring harness where it splits into the three different connectors here. And we're just going to run that up right up to this point here where these two pipes join the main part. We're going to take the cable tie, we're going to run it with the little block behind. Do that one up. We're going to try and keep that little block right down the bottom here. So we do that up nice and tight. And then we take our side cutters and just clip that tail off. The next cable tie goes through this little hole here. Just feed that through there. And then we're going to take this wire and just run it nice and tight between these two pipes here. And then we'll do this cable tie up. Once again, we're just going to try and keep that block sitting behind the pipes here, just so it's out of the way visually. And just run this nice and tight through there. And then again, just clip the end of that cable tie off. We're also going to remove this little cable management clip that's still installed, and then take one of the small cable ties and run it through this hole here. Around that one. We're just going to sit that just to the back there. Once again, trim the tail off. We'll take this wire, feed it back under the clip that it came from, push that all the way back in, and then we're just going to feed this excess wire all the way up along the swing arm here, and just feed it back up underneath the tail here. There's not a lot of excess, so that excess can just sit there. The tail tidy itself mounts on these three hex spaces. We're just going to screw those into the three threads on the back of the rear guard here. And then we'll do those up nice and tight. Reconnect the wiring for the lights, making sure that you get the colour coding correct. So that the orange wired plug goes to the orange wired plug. Just push those in place, and then the same with the blue and green to the blue and green. And then the LED bolt wires go black to green and then red to brown. Then just make sure with these ones that you get these little covers in place. And then take this wiring, coil it up so that it sits behind the tail tidy, and then we're just going to position the tail tidy in place, and then take our 3 countersunk bolts that came in the kit and just wind them into place. We can then take our Phillips head screwdriver and tighten those up. Before we continue, we need to make one really important check. Just turn your ignition on and make sure that when we use the indicators, they work on the correct sides. I also like to make sure that my brake light's working correctly, and then check that your number plate light is lighting up as well. With this bike, you do have a headlight switch, so you will have to turn that on before it turns on. If the light hasn't lit up properly, you've probably got those 2 wires back to front. The last thing to do is to fit your number plate. And we're all done. It's a good idea, once you've been for a few rides, just go over all the nuts and bolts and check that everything's still tight. We hope this video has helped you install your product. If you haven't yet purchased one and you'd like to, mustardbikes.com. We carry a whole range of tail tidies for a whole range of bikes. Don't forget to let us know how you went on our socials, Facebook, Instagram. We love to see how you went. If you have any issues, help@mustardbikes.com and we'll do what we can to help. Thanks for watching. Until next time.